chapter 27, second column, bottom paragraph. We discussed the three signs that Moshe was given to prove that he was the Redeemer. One was he should take the staff, throw it to the ground, and it becomes a snake. The other is putting his hand into his chest. He becomes a leper. And the third is taking water, pouring on the ground, and it turns to blood. So the question is, what is the symbolism of these three miracles which he's going to perform, which is going to prove that he's the Goel, that he's the Redeemer? What is the significance of the three signs? Neged Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Each one of these miracles, the signs to prove that he's the Redeemer, one corresponds to Avram, the other corresponds to Yitzchak, and the third corresponds to Yaakov. Now the question is, evidently there's some kind of correlation between the snake and Avram, the staff and Avram, the leprosy and Yitzchak, and the blood corresponds to Yaakov. What is the corresponding factor here? Vinira. Through these three revealed miracles, what's being displayed? The characteristics of the avos. When, God forbid, a person is bitten by a poisonous snake, the venom goes into the person is just, it burns through him. It's interesting. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin there are 4 levels of death penalties. One is sreifa, dying by burning. So the Gemara explains burning doesn't mean, God forbid, incinerating a person's body, burning a person at the stake. Why? Because since the Torah says, V'hafta l'recho kamocha, so to destroy the physical body, it's the antithesis of V'hafta l'recho kamocha. So therefore, definitely does not mean burning a person at the stake, but rather they would take molten lead and they would pour it down his throat. So his innards were burnt, and it would be instantaneous death. So the body remains intact. So the person has that dignity, at least the human dignity, it's there, the body's intact, not incinerated. When a snake bites, what does it do? The venom burns through the person. The Gemara tells us that although today we don't have the 4 levels of death penalty, but we have things which correspond. What is skila? What is stoning? The main aspect of stoning is they would put a person on an elevated platform, and they would tie his hands and feet, and they would push him off backwards. And what would happen? Since he's not able to brace his fall, he would break his neck. It was instantaneous death. So doesn't mean, and afterwards they put just a stone on him, which was symbolism. What was shreifa, as we explained? Pouring molten lead. What is chenek? Asphyxiation. They would take a cloth, and 2 people they wrap it around his neck, 2 people would pull in opposite directions. That's how he would be strangled. But today we don't have that. So a person's deserving of, let's say, stoning. He falls to his death. Person falls off a rooftop. Person's liable for burning. He's bitten by a venomous snake. The venom burns through his body. Just bringing this out. So it's like Eish. So the venom is the equivalent of Eish, fire. So he says, it burns through the person's body with the poison, the venom of the snake. Nimshach mimidas Yitzchak. Shemidoso Eish. What is Yitzchak? Is fire. Yitzchak is what is the attribute of justice, perfection, precision, exactness, uncompromising. That's fire. Totally all-consumed. Hatzoras kesheleg. What's leprosy? It's white. All the various levels of lesions, they indicate whether it's leprous lesion or not. It's based on its intensity of white. That's what it is. What's chesed? Chesed is what? That's white. Shemidoso hamayim. His midah is water. V'asheluk hamayim. Umidoso makzat tzoras. If as a result of what he represents, this tzoras, ukachsova akavim emahalel, Therefore, Akavim Mahalalel is one of the members of the Mishnaic period, says, Maros Nagoyim, the various shades of white of leprous lesions, Shiv Mushtayim. Hear this? The 72 shades of leprous lesions, white, Kimisper Chesed. Here, we're saying leprosy corresponds to Avram. What was Avram's primary characteristics? Chesed, indiscriminate kindness. Shemisham Maksin Nagoyim Nimshochim. Zemidis Avram. Vadam, what's dam? Dam is blood. Blood is the life source of a human being. Huteva mimutza sheish bo chamimus eish uktzas lachus hamayim. This body temperature, the warmth of the body. Talk about hypothermia. A person dies, right? The body is not able to maintain a certain minimum temperature to keep the person alive. So blood is a combination. First, it's liquid, and also it represents heat. It's really a synthesizing fire and water. It has the characteristic of water being liquid. On the other hand, it also, in terms of to provide life, it's what? It has that warmth in it, has the heat. Mezeg adam, that is the nature of blood. So neged midas Yaakov shemidosa mutza beineshu mayim kol ushneim. What is rachmim? Rachmim is synthesizing din and chesed, right? Chesed is indiscriminate kindness. Din is exacting. What's rachmim? Rachmim means if there's no hope, one doesn't even pay attention. But if there's hope, there's mercy, give another chance. But let's say all hope is what? It's hopeless. There's no point in delaying the what? Delaying the inevitable. We found by Sodom, right? The appellation for our God destroying Sodom was Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei was Rachmim. The answer is no, because since even Midas HaRachmim, even the attribute of mercy, agreed, there's no hope. They've reached such a level of evil, they're beyond return. Therefore, they should be destroyed. So Yaakov is synthesizing the fire and water, which is blood, which is really synthesizing din and chesed. Both ki'adamu ikaro odom ba'atzmo. What's the essence of the person? Blood. T'chsiv shofech damo odom ba'odom. One sheds a human person's blood. Shedding blood means taking his life. V'midas Yaakov. Udvorim edu yidor maskilim vein sofik pem. He says, a person who appreciates these concepts, you understand, I mean, what is the life source of a human being? Yaakov, Torah. Keim chayim v'vorech yameinu. Eitz chaim hin lamarzikim bo. Right? Yaakov is the patriarch of Torah. Yaakov ishtam yoshev olim. He's the man of the tent of Torah. Lefiza yosos be'esh u'v'mayim shev hafochim. Fire and water are opposites. Fire is Yitzchak. Mayim is they're opposite ends of the spectrum. Chesed is indiscriminate kindness. That's Avram. Yitzchak is what? Is exacting, precision, precise. So each one is what? As I said, opposite ends of the spectrum. And what's the happy medium between the two of them? Synthesizing both. That's blood. He says, in addition, you should understand, one had a greater level of intensity than the other. What does that mean? What happened with the snake? The staff turned to the snake, reverted back to what? Reverted back to the staff. So it wasn't something meant to remain permanently. Okay? He says, first of all, what was the staff? We're not talking about a wooden staff. It was something, as it says in the Midrash, when you study, you read the Haggadah on Pesach night, it had etched on it. It was made of sapphire, and it had etched on it the Deser Makos, based on the acronym of Rabbi Yehuda Omer. The Tzach, Chav, Badash, it was all engraved on the staff made of sapphire. So if that would remain a snake, it's a tremendous loss. I mean, here you have a godly staff, and it's turned into a snake, which is a reptile, which is the most despicable. It represents something. This is the snake who seduced Chava. When it reverted back to the staff, it's what? It's like a new entity came back. It went out of existence, came back into existence. And it was never meant to remain a snake. It wasn't called a nochosh. Even though it functioned as a snake, a full snake, wasn't like an optical illusion or something. It was a snake. But since it wasn't meant to remain a snake, therefore, even as a snake, its classification is not snake. In a moment, Moshe's hand turned leprous. Although he recovered immediately, when he took his hand, he put his hand back into his chest area. It reverted back to the normal, healthy look. That was leprous. He says, leprosy is not meant to be permanent. It comes and goes. Person has a lesion, it heals, goes away. So in terms of the characteristic of leprosy, that is what leprosy is. A snake, once a snake, it's a snake. This snake is not meant to remain a snake, the staff. So it's not what you call a real snake. Even though in its makeup, it's a snake. But what's leprosy? Leprosy is only a temporary state. So since it passes, therefore even temporary, being leprous, but that is what leprosy is. Shei mutzaraz gomor. Although his hand was fully leprous, was covered with leprosy, but ultimately, it's not a terminal situation. It's not something which is terminal illness. He's going to recover. So we're going from less intense to more intense. The first one is, its classification is not snake, because it's meant to revert back to a staff. The second, it is leprosy, but leprosy, a person recovers from leprosy. So in terms of what it is the so-called disease, but it's meant to recover, because a person recovers. When the water turned to blood, there was meant to remain blood. When he poured the water onto the ground, it turned to blood. It never reverted back to water. That water never reverted back to water. So that was permanent. Okay? One added to the other in terms of intensity. The first one, its classification, even though it was a snake, wasn't a snake because it was meant to revert back to the staff. The second was leprosy, but it's meant to pass. The third, the water will never revert back to blood. To water, it will remain blood. Therefore it says in the Pasuk, Im lo yaminu kol osa rishon. Hashem says to Moshe, if they're not going to believe the first sign, yaminu kol osa achron, because the second one is like an upgrade. It's more advanced. Why should they believe the second more than the first? And the third more than the second? He says, and if they don't believe even the second, they'll believe the third. They intensified. It was like an upgrade. Each sign, in terms of miracle, established itself in a more advanced level. It's interesting. Just thinking. We're saying that in addition, that the signs, each one corresponds to one of the others. One corresponds to Avram, one corresponds to Yitzchak, one corresponds to Yaakov. Now, originally, what was the intention of creation? What would have been best for creation? It says, Bereshis bara Elokim. In the best interest of existence, what would have been best is the attribute of justice. Everything is exact, perfect. There's no imperfection in existence. A person misbehaves, he receives what he... So therefore, whoever is here are perfect people. You weed out the bad ones. That's what you weed out. But Hashem saw it. But in reality, the world cannot exist. So therefore, he introduces Midas Harachmi. He coalesces one with the other. So what's permanent? Got it? What is permanent? Yaakov is the permanent state. Midas Harachmin is the reality of existence. So it comes out, as he's explaining, The others are only temporary. Whether it's because it's supposed to revert back to the staff or leprosy, a person recovers. The water never reverted back. After it turned to blood, never reverted back. That's permanent. What's permanent? Yaakov is permanent. That's the midas harachmim. Rachmim, that is the permanent state of existence. That's how Hashem interacts with existence, because otherwise existence couldn't exist without the attribute of rachmim. Right? We said it burns, it consumes like fire. What? It's a miracle, it became fire. So we're speaking about fire, water. It's the antithesis, meaning they cannot coexist. But if they don't believe the first, which represents fire, venom burns through a person like fire, and chesed is water. There's not something which is a synthesis, which is the happy medium, the center point between water and fire. As he explained, because blood is liquid, and also blood only has value in terms of life if it has a certain degree of temperature. The reason why it's warm, because it has a certain element of fire. And the reason why it's liquid, because it has the characteristic of water. We have a representation of two opposites, things which cannot coexist, and something which is a synthesis between two. Therefore, so there's a representation of the right, the left, and the center. It's interesting, the Rambam, when he speaks about the Shvil Azov, the golden path, he speaks about various characteristics a person has. Chesed, anger, positive, negative characteristics that a person has. A person is generous, a person is gluttonous, a person is such an ascetic that he has no interest in even what he needs for his bare minimum existence. He has no interest in addressing the necessary amenities of life. See, all these extremes are very bad. Bad. For good or bad. But what is the proper path? The equidistant point between both. He refers to that Shvil Azov. That's the golden path. So I explained. What I explained was the Rambam. I mean, don't be too extreme. Rambam doesn't say be too extreme. When you study, don't study too much. Don't be too much of a tzaddik. I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't follow the Rambam's prescription of being a good Jew. He didn't follow the golden path, because that's the equidistant point. So what I said was, what is the key to succeed in life, especially as a Jew? Clarity. Clarity. What happens if a person has a conflict of interest? The conflict immediately detracts from one's clarity, because you're seeing through rose-colored glasses. That's conflict. Now, if a person naturally is overly generous, a person makes a request of you, so what is your immediately reaction or feeling? Definitely, I'm going to give. You know something? But it may not be a proper cause to support. Maybe it's not legitimate. Maybe, even though it is, but to the degree that you want to give, it shouldn't, that much is beyond what should be given. So there the person is playing into his emotion. What about if he's miserly? The moment somebody asks him of something, subconsciously he has 1,000 reasons why not to give. Subconsciously. Maybe he's not honest, maybe it's not legitimate, maybe what about me, what about my family, what about my friends? A million reasons why he should not give. So again, so the conflict doesn't allow him, even though the intellectual evaluation should say it's worthy, but because the emotion immediately interplays with that, it interferes. So how does a person gain total objectivity? That's the center path. That's the equidistant point for both extremes. Now you have a balance. Now the mind, the intellect, Jung's endowed with intellect to make that evaluation. That's what's the Shvil Azov. That's the golden path. You understand? Chesed is extreme. It's extreme. What is extreme? Indiscriminate kindness. Deserving, undeserving, you accommodate everyone. Yitzchak is din, precise, but the world is not perfect. People are not perfect. You have to be you have to have patience. You can be. But that was his midah. Who was the most special of the patriarchs? That was the synthesizing both. So that's the Shvil Azov. Yaakov is the Shvil Azov between Avram and Yitzchak. So why did they choose the others? Because in terms of where Avram was at, Avram began. He had to introduce God to the world. He couldn't discriminate and make that evaluation. He had to offer its kindness to everyone. Firstly, as I explained, why was the world created? Olam Chesed Yiboneh. If he's introducing God to existence, so what characteristic has to be displayed? Chesed. Yitzchak din. Din is something else. Because yes, Yitzchak understood. Once Avram already made God known in existence, and now he has to, what Rambam says, if you have an extreme characteristic, how do you get to the center point? You have to go to the opposite extreme. It's like a pendulum, and eventually you end up in the center. So Yitzchak had to go to the other extreme. And who was the pendulum ended up in the center? That was Yaakov. That's Midas HaRachmim. Okay? So therefore, blood, which is a synthesis of chesed, and din, which is fire and water, therefore we have blood. And what is blood? Blood is life. That is life. Interesting. White always represents purity. We're saying the 72 shades of leprosy, Akavim Malalo says, and the gematria of Chesed is 72. Right? White is always purity. And yet, the most intense level of impurity is leprosy. Here it's so-called snow white. It's more than lily white. It's snow white. It's Chesed. But yet what is it? Disastrous. It has the same level of what? It's like the contamination of the dead. A leper walks into a covered room, an area, everything within his proximity is contaminated, like a corpse. I mean, so why is it white? You say it should be red, it should be whatever, not black, which represents dread, right? Why white? White is not temporary. You have black and white, and you have gray. Right? It's all gray. It's all gray, you know, if you don't have clarity, it's all gray. But it is black and white. If you see clear enough, it's black and white. I'm just bringing up the point. Why should it be white? Saras is white. So I was just thinking. The Gemara says in Brachos that Kol hanitzroch lebrios. These are the words of the Gemara. Kol hanitzroch lebrios ponov mishtana lekama gavonim. So the way it's interpreted, translated, the person who has to come on to mankind for his livelihood and for all his amenities of existence, his face turns many colors. So it literally means, you know, tremendous embarrassment. You have to compromise your whole dignity, and sometimes you have to accept insult, and it's not a happy existence. So, nitzroch lebrios, ponav mishtan lekama, your face turns many colors. Gavona means many colors. That's what it is. So the Chassam Sofer says, explains it this way. he says, if it would be the way everybody interprets it, should say, Kol hatzorach librios. One who needs people, his face turns many colors. But it says, Kol hanitzroch. One who's needed by people. The one who's needed by people, his face turns many colors. What does it mean? He gives an example. Person's a rov. He's in a position where he has to deal with many different kinds of people. Certain people, because of their emotional makeup and their sensitivities, you have to be very gentle with that person. So that person comes in smiling, kind word. So what is the demeanor of the rov versus that person? A certain type of state, interaction. Another person comes in who deserves to be rebuked, and he has a very thick skin. That person, you have to speak sternly to that person. So the countenance is a different countenance. It may be you're upset. So therefore, being in a position of responsibility where you have to deal with many people, your face has to turn many colors, meaning you have to take on different countenances to be effective, to interact and affect the people. This is how the Chassam Sofer explains the Gemara. Therefore, it doesn't say kol hatzorach lebrios, kol hanitzroch, the one who is needed by people. To be effective, you can't be smiling to everybody. Like people say, everybody's my friend. If everybody's your friend, you have no friends. Okay? So I was thinking, what's white? White is not for every occasion. Not for every occasion. You're white, ultimately, it's black. Meaning you can't conduct yourself always. Sometimes you have to be off color. Not off color, chas v'sholem, in something inappropriate. You have to deal differently. You can't always be what white, of course, represents purity. I mean, Yaakov, when he had to take the brachos, he came and he altered the truth. Otherwise, he wouldn't have. It would have been disastrous. So Yaakov had to take the white and go slightly, and he had to present himself like Esau. But in the context that he presented himself, that was the proper thing to do. So, but this is like the conscientious objector. You know, what? Yeah. I mean, the question, your life is at stake, your country's security is at stake. I don't fight. No. You can be put up before the firing squad. I don't run away from the bullets. I take it straight. I mean, it's insanity. What about there's a law, the Torah says you're obligated to defend your life. Self-defense. And it's a mitzvah. It's an obligation. But I want to be a white person, you know, purely white, pure. There's no such thing. That's not the reality. Everything is, you gauge it based on the particular circumstance. So it could be that's why white represents something which is in the context of leprosy. So chesed also. You can't do chesed. Sometimes you raise a child, you spoil them rotten. What are you raising? A monster. By the time he becomes an adult, he'll be a monster, right? Howard. Okay. Omar. Kasher nasis yad b'tzoras. It says the hand became leprous. He put his hand into his shirt, his chest area, took it out, and his hand was leprous. It says leprous like snow. Just say just leprous. It was leprous like snow. And when he put it back to be healed, so Rashi makes the point. He didn't have to take it fully out. To become leprous, he had to put it in, and only when he fully took it out, fully took his hand out, that's when it became leprous. Putting it in slightly, I mean, he put it in, slightly taking it out, and he already recovered. Yeah. It's interesting. There's a law that what happens, we know that, let's say, the remains of a human being contaminates. The carcass of an animal, a dead animal, contaminates. It's called nevela. If a person comes in contact with a source of contamination, a rodent, it's contaminated. What happens accidentally, the rodent touches your underarm. That's called tumas beisastorim. It's part of your body that's not usually exposed, uncovered, Uncovered, I mean covered with garments. Meaning the body covers itself. If it touches that part of the body's not contaminated. This is Gevruras. That's what the Torah says. Contamination is only if it touches the revealed part of your body. The exposed part of your body exposed, which is naturally exposed. Doesn't mean what you cover, what you don't cover. But the area that the body covers itself, you're not contaminated, okay? So he says, so we see Tumah, contamination's only in the open, when it's revealed. Ki mokum beis hastorim eino tomei. A location which is always hidden, that location is not contaminated. Gam shom ein atuma bo. And contamination doesn't come from there. It's only once he took his hand out, beating b'tzoras, when it was exposed, that's when it became. Although, when you put your hand to your chest, the chest is really a revealed part of the body. It's only because it's covered with your garment. He told Hashem, says, put your hand within your chek. Now, he says like this. He says something phenomenal. What is the essence of existence? Kedusha. Holiness. What is contamination? Where does contamination emanate from? Vacuum, void. That's called chitzoni. It's outside. If it's the essence, the core has no relevance to contamination. It's when you veer away from the core, that's what we speak about. When we speak about nether forces, they're called kochos chitzonios. The outward forces, that are nether forces. He took it out mecheko, shemicheko nisrapi. So where did healing come? It came from the concealed part. Avorazal dorshu mizeh. From here, the Gemara says, Chazalto ki mida tova maharis lovo mida b'shel paranos. That the recovery comes a lot quicker than what? Than the punishment, because Hashem wants to help the person more than He wants to punish the person. Shemida tova nemar ve'utzi micheko. It says He took it out partially from his chest area. He was healed immediately. But when the leprosy came, what does it say? He had to take it fully out. He fully amevin ikur hadvorim yovin. He says if a person understands the essence of what we're discussing here, ki hu iatzmo atam shamarnu. It's exactly atarabo mimokom elyon nistar. He says where does purity? Who's the source of all purity? God. God is something concealed. It's interesting. Let me explain this. The Ramchal writes, we say that man was created in the image of God. But God has no image. Right? God's infinite. God has no image. So we said that intellect, intelligence, and choice, that's the image and the form. But nevertheless, God relates to this existence a certain way. We have eyes. What does a human being have eyes? Because it says in the verse, in the pasuk, Eini Hashem. God gazes upon existence. So even though God doesn't have eyes, but since for us to relate to how He's interacting with existence, it says God's eyes, God's hand, or the hands of God. So therefore, man, being in His image in terms of the way he relates to this existence, that's what we see. He sees, we see. His hand is powerful, and right hand is more powerful, left hand is less, is the weaker hand. So right represents positive, left represents negative, whatever it may be. So he's saying phenomenal. Why, regarding laws of contamination, is the Beis HaStorim not susceptible for contamination? He said, like under your arm. If somebody would take a piece of nevela and put it directly in your mouth, you would not be contaminated. He touches it to your skin, you're contaminated. Because the mouth, normally the mouth is closed. That's called, it's the recesses of the body. It's the hidden recesses of the body. But why? What difference? Outside, inside. It should be the same. You know what the answer is? Because just as God Himself is nistar, He's concealed, and God has no relevance to impurity, because God is the source of all purity and holiness. Therefore, anything which is nister, which it resembles and has a semblance of that, has no relevance to contamination. So what's concealed? Relatively speaking, on the person's body. The inner cavity of the body, the underarm, and inside the mouth. It's interesting. The Gemara tells us, if a woman is carrying a stillborn, so a stillborn is a corpse. Before she delivers it, before it comes out of her body, she walks into a room, it does not contaminate. It's entombed in the body. Okay? Let's say the Gemara speaks about a woman, the midwife, she puts her hand into the woman to pull out the fetus. It's an unborn fetus, but the fetus is not alive. When she puts her hand in there, she becomes contaminated. But the mother is not contaminated, and the location is not contaminated. Why? Because it's called tumah belua. The contamination with there is totally entombed. It's swallowed up by the body. But because she touched it, and she's outside, she becomes contaminated. The midwife. It's interesting. Here we're talking about this is the essence of what? Of contamination. The mother's not contaminated. Why is she contaminated? The answer is, again, where is the location of that? There's no more concealed location of a person's body. It's more than the underarm. There's the womb. There's a child that developed, there's a child without life in it, in the womb. That's the inner recesses of the body. No laws of contamination. The woman's not contaminated. It's entombed there. Not only, it can't even emanate from there to contaminate something else. Where does all purity emanate from? From a location which is exalted, which is concealed from us. That comes from a nether force. A power, something which has no relevance to this world. It's a foreign force. Therefore, when it's revealed, it contaminates. Something which is the essence comes more quickly. He says, put your hand into your chest area. The hand is part of the body of the person. Put your hand into your chest area to bring about the change from the hidden location, the chadish pillar. And something which is wondrous is going to happen. When he takes it out, it becomes leprous. Kiloshin pillar. It's interesting. Why is a wonder called a wonder? Pella. What does Pella mean? A wonder. So something's nifla. It's wondrous. Why? Because it's something which is beyond. A miracle is a wonder, right? It's indescribable. It's not fathomable. You can't grasp it. So what is that? That's hidden. Pella means hidden, right? When it says Sarah laughed. So what did Hashem say? Hayipoli me Hashem dover. Is anything beyond God's ability? Nothing's beyond God's ability. So Pella means concealed. We say nisim v'niflos, miracles and wonders, right? That's the meaning of niflos. Bo'mi mokum nistar, because where does a miracle emanate from? You have nature, natural. You have supernatural. Where does it emanate from? It emanates from the concealed. So when does leprosy? When you put your hand there and you take it out, where is it coming from? It's coming from concealed. The staff that was thrown turned into a snake. The water which was transformed into blood. That's the action. The action brought it about. It didn't have, nothing had to be concealed there. Water directly on the ground. The hand is, you're not doing an action. Okay. It's interesting. We say in the third paragraph of the Shema, Lo sosuru achrei levavchem, achrei inechem, asher atem zunim achreim. You should not veer after your hearts, after your eyes, asher atem zonim. So the Gemara said, what is each one referring to? Achrei levavchem, that's heresy. The person has a heretical thought. That's thought. That's achrei levavchem. We say in the second paragraph of the Shema, penyifte levavchem. Maybe your hearts will be seduced. Right, seduction of the heart. That's minus. That's heresy. Achrei anechem, that's nus. That's not looking, gazing on something which is forbidden. Sheratem zonim, that's idolatry. That's idolatry. Now, a person, all these things, they're all intangibles. Heresy is an intangible. It's what you believe. It's in your mind, in your heart, emotion. What is, when you look at something, it may be tangible, but the act of looking, it's not something which is concrete. You gaze upon something. And what's idolatry? You have an idolatrous thought. That's also atem zon. Doesn't mean the act of idolatry. This all is something which has to do with the intellect and the emotion. So what is that? That's all concealed, as he's saying. You're taking what's concealed, which is the most sacred of a human being, and what are you putting? What are you associating with it? Heresy, promiscuity, and idolatry. Rav Chaim Volozhin writes in the Nefesh HaChaim, we read the Romans destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash, second temple. So Titus, he went into the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies. First he took a sword and he ran this sword through the curtain that separates. Hashem made a miracle. It started to bleed. Blood started to flow from it. Specifically for this reason. So what did this Titus say? He says, I killed, God forbid, the Jewish God. When I pierced the curtain, that's the blood. That's what God wanted. Then he took the paroches, you hear this? And he took it into the Holy of Holies. And he took a prostitute and he cohabited with her on the paroches in the Holy of Holies. To desecrate it, the most extreme level of desecration. That's what he did, this evil man. This Titus. This Titus. Imagine Jews giving their children the name Titus. Shem Yishom Yikav. The names of the evil should rot. Okay? So, Rav Chaim Volozhin says that if a person has a lewd thought in his mind, it's the equivalent of going to the Holy of Holies and having relations with a prostitute. That's how sacred the mind is. The mind of a Jew. So let's ask why. Okay? Because the mind should be used for Torah. Right? But what makes it sacred? Well, the way the Maral is explaining it, there's nothing more concealed in a human being. You have a monkey, you have a human being. Any other creature other than human being, what is the mind? It only directs instinct. The human mind is everything. That's the essence of the human being. That's the intellect. There's nothing more concealed. So you look at the monkey and ape, same species. One more advanced. No. The concealed, the brain, the intellect, that's concealed. What is that? That's godliness. Concealed represents what's concealed. Everything holy comes from the concealed location. Because Hashem is concealed. Hashem is Nister. Therefore, taking something inappropriate into that location, into that domain, it's the ultimate level of what? Of desecration. It's desecrating the holiest location. So therefore I'm saying, in the third paragraph of the Shema, Lo sesura achrei levavchem, the heart and the mind is the same thing. What is that? That's heresy. In the location which represents the ultimate, you're denying God's existence. This is the ultimate level of what? Of disgrace, of arrogance. Your eyes, they still haven't figured out how does a person see, the brain. I mean, they know how it works, but they don't understand how it works. How it works. Why it works. How it works, they understand, but why it works, they don't understand it. Right? Everything else is a sense, but it's something you understand. You have neuron endings you feel, but how the brain uses the eye to be able to see, they haven't figured that out yet. And what about znus? That's what? That's avodah zorah. It's idolatry. Having an idolatrous thought. So where are you bringing the idolatrous thought? Also, in a location which is most sacred, which is the equivalent of the Kodesh Kadoshim. Now you understand why it's the Kodesh Kadoshim. It's not because it could be used for Torah. So therefore, it's interesting. A Jew is supposed to, his mind has to be occupied with certain thoughts continuously. Right? Except when he's sleeping. It's supposed to be occupied with certain, except when you're sleeping. You have no choice. So, but why? Why does the mind always have to be engaged? Because what is the mind? So it's interesting. David says, Shvi Hashem Negdi Somit. God is always before me, before my eyes. What does that mean? God is always before me. It's continuous. What is God? Having God in mind, it's not only the value of that, because as the Ramos says, a person behaves differently in the presence of the king than when he's not in the presence of the king, but having that in mind, because that is what godliness is. The mind represents the intellect, which is the Tzelem Elokim. Why is the mind Tzelem Elokim? Because there's nothing more nistar in the human being than the intellect. And what about the ability to make choices? Where does that come from? The Rambam says in Hilchus Tshuva, he says, not like the fools think. He says the tipshim, the fools, that one state is predetermined. Evil, it's predetermined that you're evil. You have no control. Good, it's predetermined you're good. Rambam says, not true. It's foolishness, it's baseless, it's wrong. Every human being has the ability to make the choice, positive or negative. You're endowed with that ability to overcome whatever obstacle there may be. You're endowed with that ability. What is that? So when we talk about B'tzalmo B'dmuso, in his image and his form, what is that? It's concealed. Intellect and Koach HaBechira, the power of choice. And what is that? God is concealed. And so the intellect and the power of choice, that is godliness of a human being. Person chooses to doze off. The Gemara says that if a person makes a netter or an oath, he's not going to sleep for 3 days, it's an oath in vain, because you cannot stay up for 3 days. Not possible. What about if you slept last night 8 hours and then you doze off? That's within your ability to stay awake. Right? Okay, so that kind of person can make a commitment. I will not doze off during the shir. That commitment you're able to make. It's within your ability. Okay. Okay. That's called a subtle rebuke. Okay. It's also hidden. Okay, 28th chapter. V'yom Moshe Hashem. Now this is difficult, People study Chumash and the obvious questions. What is the next thing Hashem says to Moshe? Moshe says to God. Moshe had a speech impediment. How did Moshe's speech impediment come about? Because when he was a little child, there was a question, Bilam, who was a sorcerer, besides a prophet, but he was a sorcerer also, and he was one of the advisors to Paro. And Paro, he loved Moshe more than he loved a grandchild. He was the adopted grandson of Moshe, and he would sit on his lap when he'd have his audiences with people, and he's sitting, he's playing with Moshe, his little adopted grandson, and Moshe takes the crown off Paro's head, puts it on his own head. That's what he does. Bilam sees that. He says to Paro, you must kill him immediately. this man will destroy your kingdom. Taking the crown off your head, put it on his head, means he will topple you from the throne. He will destroy Egypt. He says, his child? He says, no. He says, he did it intentionally. This child has intelligence. He knows exactly what he's doing. So he says, okay, we'll do a test. Test. So they took a plate of glowing coals and a plate of gold nuggets, also which sparkled, which shined. And they take Moshe to take, and the glowing coals were just as attractive, no less attractive than the gold nuggets. Of course, Moshe had phenomenal intelligence. He's going for the gold. An angel comes, pushes his hand into the hot coals, and he takes the hot coal. What do you do? Put it to his lips. And that's how he developed, he was injured. He was burnt. That's how he had his speech impediment. It burnt his lips and the tip of his tongue. So he spoke with a speech impediment. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe says, here I'm supposed to be your agent, your representative. I should have the ability to be the most eloquent spokesman with an articulation which is one of a kind. It's a disgrace. I'm going to represent you. V'yomo shel Hashem, be Hashem, please God. Luish dvorim anochi. I'm not a man of words. You understand? God says to you, you will represent me and speak. God is sending you. Is it a problem? But I can't speak. Well, if God says you're going to go and speak, you're going to speak. And what does Hashem respond? Misam pelo odom. Who gives anybody the ability to speak? Right? Every person's existence is willed by God. If I want you to speak, you're going to speak. So what are you worried about? So the question is, what was even the consideration of the question? Right? Moshe Rabbeinu was not speaking. He's not an ordinary person. He's not speaking arrogantly to God, saying nonsense and something which is unacceptable and absurd and stupidity. Evidently, there was a basis to say what he said. But what was the basis? Lo ish dvar anochi. I'm not a man of words. Moshe himself was nearly 20 feet tall. He was exceptionally tall. Out of the ordinary. So he's asking another question. Moshe had every quality within a physical being. He had beauty, he had presence, he had radiance, he had everything. Why did Moshe possess? What did Hashem allow him to develop, to be subject to the speech impediment, to this harm which diminished from his being a perfect being in the physical sense? That it actually infringed on his power of speech. That's what the Maharal is addressing. Why? You know, if a person, God forbid, is mute, you could be beautiful and handsome, intelligent, you can't express yourself. This is a very serious flaw if you can't speak. So something which has such great importance, expression, verbal expression, in every sense of the way, he's perfect, Moshe. But when it comes to speak, he's what? He's compromised. Why did Hashem allow him to be compromised? You have the question. Okay? Da. When we speak something is material, what's the difference between material and something which is spiritual? Material has form, it has substance in the physical sense. Something which is spiritual has no form, has no substance. Now, if Moshe Rabbeinu himself would be perfect in every sense of the word, even in verbal expression, so you'd say he's special. Eloquent speaker, charisma, presence, power. So what are you attributing Moshe's greatness to? All his physical qualities. You understand? So what's most important he doesn't have. Despite that, he's one of a kind. So where does it emanate from? From his physicality or from spirituality? Therefore, the compromise, what was compromised? The power of speech. To be continued.